to stay ahead of conflict as much as possible. And one of the things that you can do that can help you with that is the communication. So don't let things fester, don't let things sit. As you feel irritated about a certain thing, or you feel left out of a certain thing, or you feel maybe a lot of couples privilege, the couple is making decisions for you if you're the third person in the relationship, just mention them as they come up and maybe in the most neutral way possible. Welcome to the Open Bedroom Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kaylo. Welcome to conversations about open relationships, online dating, and creating relationship dynamics that truly align for you. Welcome back to the Open Bedroom Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Ruskin. Today you have a solo episode with me. What the fuck is a throuple relationship and how do they work is today's topic. So the first thing that I want to start with is, just like you would say, I am in a couple or we're a couple, the only difference is you add one more person into your relationship and you say, we are a throuple. So I know that this can get really confusing. I'm going to be going over terms today just to help kind of educate. It's not all that confusing. Instead of it being two people in a relationship called a couple, it's three people in a relationship called a throuple. So let's go through some words of like, what do these things mean? Things that fall into maybe the world of throuples. One is a closed relationship. And this is for, doesn't matter how many people are inside of the relationship, but it means the relationship is closed and people are only having sex with other people inside the relationship. So this could be a quad. Maybe there's two different couples who have sex with each other, but they don't have sex with anyone else outside the quad. That is a closed relationship. An open relationship would be anybody inside of the group. If they are sleeping outside of the group, it's considered an open relationship. For example, Scott and I have an open relationship where we don't just sleep with each other, but we occasionally bring a woman into our bedroom or into our relationship, into our life, into our home, and it's open. Okay. I want to talk about compersions. So I just recently did an episode on jealousy. This was the episode before last, if you want to go back and listen to it. And I talk about how I finished work one day and Scott had left to go have a date with Steph, our girlfriend. And I'm sitting in front of his giant television watching Bridgerton and eating a leftover quesadilla. And my heart was so fucking happy knowing that they were spending time together, and I was all alone getting to watch my Bridgerton episode, and there was zero jealousy. I had reached compersion. It just means that you feel compassionate, loving feelings for your partner being with someone else. You've reached compersion. That's what the feeling is called. Ethical non-monogamy. This is also referred to as consensual non-monogamy, and it just means you're in an open relationship that is conscious and you're having conscious communication with your partner about who you're seeing, what you're doing, that you are sleeping outside of the relationship. That's called ethical non-monogamy. You're not cheating. You are fully being aware and transparent to your partner or partners that you are seeing other people. Let's talk about swinging versus polyamory. I have lots of episodes on this if you're curious. Swingers typically have an open relationship that is only sexually based. They don't want to catch feelings or fall in love or be in a relationship with you. This is a sole purpose of having a fun sexual exploration or experience. Polyamory is all about polyamory, multiple loves. And we realize in polyamory, I'm polyamorous, that you can love more than one person in the same way you can love multiple animals that you have or love multiple children that you have. we realize, or we're in a particular group of people that like to love more than one person. And so polyamory is typically you are seeing someone over and over multiple times. You're in relationship with them. You might know their family. We might talk a little bit more about dynamics, but that's what polyamory is. Okay, a threesome, this is super simple. It's just sex between three people. Sometimes maybe you've had an experience as a, high school or college person where you had your first threesome. That's all it is, sex between three people. A throuple, as I mentioned, is a relationship between three people. And a triad is a common term for a throuple within the polyamorous community. So I use the word triad a lot. Steph, Scott, and I are in a triad. We're also a throuple because we're in relationship, and we have threesomes because the three of us have that sex together. So we're a throuple, we're a triad, and we have threesomes. A unicorn, this is the last one in this bucket I'm going to give you, is a third person brought into a already pre-existing relationship that doesn't necessarily have equal footing with the couple. They're just kind of brought in to be like, to have a threesome with, or to be an extra, or to provide additional fun and entertainment for a night. I do have an episode or two where we use the term unicorn. To me, unicorn is usually used loosely, and it's used when you're casually seeing someone, kind of like swinger would be casual. When we talk about Steph, we don't say we have a unicorn girlfriend. We say we have another partner. Her name is Steph. We're in a triad, or we're in a throuple. That's the terminology that we use. So there are some misconceptions about non-monogamy, and I'm going to give you a couple of these. They're so good. I'm sorry, I took a bunch of notes to do this episode for you today, but one common misconception is that people in throuples are just swingers, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Remember when I said people that are swingers are really there for the sex. They're there to have an experience sexually, be done, go back to their house. Throuple is relationshiping with a whole nother person. So when Scott and Steph and I, we've now had April, May, June, July, 15, 16 months. It sounds like a baby when you're like, my baby is 16 months old. Our relationship is 16 months old. We are in each other's lives. We're in each other's text threads. We're in each other's DMs. We, touch base and say like, how'd your day go? How's your whatever going? Hey, we have a date on the 15th. Like, it's an actual relationship. It's not just some casual thing. Isn't non-monogamy cheating? Here's another misconception. And no, it's not. So in no way is Scott or I having sex with other people without the other person knowing about it. So typically how this works for us is I'm swiping right on someone on Field or on Bumble, or he's swiping right on someone on Tinder. I got banned from Tinder, so he's still on there. Tinder, Bumble, or Field. He might start a conversation with them, or I might. And then when I realize, oh, they are interested in us as a throuple or as a couple, and they understand what our dynamic is, which I think right now we've gotten really clear and redone our dating profiles, but it says something to the effect of, hi, we're Scott and Jen, 40 and 42. We are polyamorous and only interested in dating women for long-term relationships. This could include, a married woman she's also polyamorous and seeking an additional relationship. This could be single women who are looking for a couple to be in a relationship with. And so once Scott and I find someone that's interested in both of us, then I bring him into the conversation, or he brings me into the conversation. We then introduce ourselves, get to know them, go out and have dinner, and see if it's a match. There is no cheating on each other. There's no sleeping with anybody without the other person knowing. That's the ethical part, or the consensual part in E&M or C&M, whichever acronym that you want to use. Another really common misconception is, isn't this just about sexual gratification? And I would say, no, actually, the sex is like the smallest part of being in relationship in a throuple. Um, most of my communication with Scott and Steph, or my time spent with them, is making meals together, watching shows together, vacationing together. Actually, a very small percentage of our relationship is sex. And so that's an interesting misconception, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I bet you guys, we're just fucking all the time. And that's not true. We actually have to plan it. We're all so busy that we plan a night for him and her, we plan a night for me and her, and we plan a night for the three of us together, every month, or as often as we can. And if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen because our lives are so busy. Another common misconception is you guys never get jealous because you've been in this longer term relationship. And I'll say, as long as we've been in a relationship with Steph, it definitely has become non-existent for me with her, with him, because I trust her so implicitly that she will return my guy to me, so that Scott will come home when he's done. There have been women that we have dated that I have not felt trustworthy with. I have not felt safe with, and I have felt some jealousy and I have felt some insecurity, but they didn't last. They didn't stick around. And I do have some episodes on how to beat jealousy. Again, I did one the week before last, and I'll link it in the notes so that you can go back and listen to that one. I have some really great steps of how to get over your jealousy, how to push past that feeling into compersion. And then once you get to compersion, it feels so good. You're like, oh, please go have a great time. I'm going to watch Bridgerton in my pajamas tonight and be alone. The last common misconception about throuple relationships is that someone's always going to feel left out, right? Like they're the third wheel. And I would say in our relationship, that's not true, because we've gotten to this point in our own relationship that there's space for one-on-one relationshiping. In other words, when we first started dating, we had three-way texts, we had three-way dates, we had threesomes. And then I'd say it was around the 6-month mark that we all felt super comfortable to start having one-on-one. And before then for the conversations, but having sex with each other one-on-one, it was about the 6-month mark where I encouraged him and Steph to have a night together or have several hours together. And then I was like, I would like several hours with her. I want to explore a woman's body by myself. I want to have all kinds of time to really learn her. And I don't feel like I have that when we have threesomes. So, outside of that, we have one-on-one dates when we want to. I go have breakfast if Steph and I need extra time together. And there's so many things we want to talk about that Scott's not interested in, or she comes over to the house in hot tubs, or comes over and has dinner and the kids are here. So, you know, I don't feel left out at all. I know every dynamic is different. And I would say if you are feeling left out in any way, just talk to and have conscious communication with your other two partners and say, hey, I'm really feeling left out about this thing. Or, hey, I wish when you two are alone that you would include me in this way. That would feel really good. Like, could you send me a picture, or could I get a recap at the end of the night of how it went? Or like, hey, buy me a souvenir or something, just so that you feel included. It's completely okay to ask for that. Um, I want to talk about the benefits of having a throuple. So one is more support. I know that if I need help, I don't just have Scott to go to. I know if I need more sex, I don't just have one person to go to. I can say, hey, Steph, Mama needs some time with you. Like, what are you doing Thursday night? And I can go over and have specialized one-on-one session with her. Um, if I just want to vent and I want to talk about Scott, then I can go to Steph and be like, he's driving me fucking crazy. Like, here's what's happening. Could you just listen to me and just be a sounding board, or just hold space for me to let me process how I'm feeling right now in this particular season of life that him and I are in. I love having more support. Um, when you have a throuple that lives together, imagine 3 salaries, like 3 incomes. There are several throuples that I have been watching online that do live together and do life together, and a lot of them are married. Um, and they get to do more. They get to have bigger homes. They get to have longer and more extravagant vacations. Um, they get to support one if they're going to go back to school. Like there's so much more financial stability when you have 3 people. There is more fulfilling sex. So that's definitely another one. When you're in a monogamous relationship and you've been with the same person for 10 or 15 years, chances are pretty high that you're having the same sex that you were having 15 years ago. I realized after 2 decades of a decade each husband, 2 different marriages that I was in, after each one of them, I realized, wow, like I'm still having sex like a 19-year-old. Like these men are having 15 and 20-minute sex with me. And I realized several years ago when we opened up my last marriage, as I started to explore and I met Scott. Scott was the second man that I ever dated on Tinder after my second marriage was open. And I was having 3-hour sex sessions, like massaging and fingering and oral sex and hours of lovemaking, and then leaving like a limp noodle. And my brain was just mush, and my heart was so full, and my body felt so good. I was like, I have never experienced sex like this in my whole life. So when you start to have new partners in your ethical, non-monogamous life, you start to realize there is so much in this cafeteria that's available to me. And then you start kind of opening or cracking the door open to Tantra or BDSM or play parties and sex clubs and hot wax play. And I just could keep going. Like I opened Pandora's box and was like, oh, like I can't wait to start trying some new things. So, I believe being in an open relationship, being in a throuple, being in, whatever, having multiple partners really, really grows your sexual awareness, your sexual prowess, your skills, and just makes it so much juicier and fun. A couple down things, I guess, that I want to say, like negative things about being in throuple is, you do have the opportunity to have to deal with jealousy and insecurity. That does come up, and it's a great skill to learn how to deal with. Sometimes you have a little bit tougher communication if you need to do a lot of boundary setting. If someone hasn't done trauma work or hasn't done, early childhood work, hasn't addressed their inner child, hasn't like, if we're adults walking around in adult bodies, but inside our brain or our responses are like children, it's really freaking hard to be in relationship with one person like that, let alone 2 people when one of your partners is like that. So this might bring up a need for therapy and working through all of that, which truthfully, if you're in a monogamous relationship, if you're growing at all and changing at all as a human, that should come up for you anyway. Another thing is societal pressure. The world is made for or constructed to a couple, a bicycle made for 2, a car that has a front seat with just 2 seats. Like, unless you have a bench seat in a truck, which I don't think they make a lot of, like, someone's riding in the back. Like, it's not, our world is not constructed for 3 people. It's almost more constructed for, like, even numbered humans. So if you had, a quad, it might even be a little bit easier. Um, I've noticed as I'm watching the Throuples out in the world that live together, cruise lines are incredibly difficult to get a king bed is impossible unless you're like on Virgin. Virgin Cruise Lines does have kings. So there are options out there and there are companies that are becoming more mindful. Um, I have this funny story where Steph Scott and we went to Dallas and we rented a hotel room and I rented a king. And we get there and it's so late. I mean, it's like, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock. We're exhausted. We're like holding our pillows and all of our stuff. And I'm trying to check us in. And the lady puts us in two queen beds. And I'm like, no, I need a king. And she keeps looking at me and she's like, but there's three of you. And I'm like, mm-hmm. But it's a king bed. There's only one bed. And I'm like, I know, but there's three of you. She was so confused, bless her heart. And then when she finally understood, she was like, oh, oh, well, how many keys do you want? I'm like, one key is fine. We're only sleeping one night. And she's like, are you sure? I'm just like, give me three. Like, I don't care. So you start to realize the world is just currently not set up for more than two people in a relationship. And so that kind of causes some awkwardness sometimes. Let's see what else I want to talk about. Ways to do a throuple right. One would be lots of communication, lots of bringing up your fears, bringing up your concerns, bringing up your excitement, bringing up your needs. You're going to find this is kind of an endless flow of communication until you finally reach this place where you're very grounded and very the foundation's built, and things flow normally, then that feels really good. But there's a lot of communication at the beginning. Boundaries and rules are a big thing that I think are important, especially at the beginning. Like I talked about in our throuple, our boundaries and our rules are with Steph was, we only date together. We only sleep together. We only, so we had these much tighter rules at the beginning to ensure that Scott and I felt good about our third person joining us, about stuff. And then those just adjusted, as the relationship dynamic settled and everybody felt comfortable. Conflict management. So you want to stay ahead of conflict as much as possible. And one of the things that you can do that can help you with that is the communication. So don't let things fester. Don't let things sit as you feel irritated about a certain thing, or you feel left out of a certain thing, or you feel maybe a lot of couples privilege. The couple is making decisions for you if you're the third person in the relationship. Just mention them as they come up and maybe in the most neutral way possible. So, for example, let's pretend like there's a lot of couples privilege happening and the couple is making the decisions and they're talking like you're not there. You could say something like, hey, babes, I'm sure you're not even aware of this, but it's kind of hurtful when you guys make decisions and you don't include me. For example, Bob, the husband, Bob is, looking for a new job. And I know you guys are going to need to change, cities or towns or upgrade your home or whatever. And I'd love to be part of that conversation, if you guys are in a serious throuple. Or maybe you feel like there's a lot of couples privilege because you only get to see your couple when they invite you over. And you could say something like, guys, I'm sure you're really not even aware of this, but um, I'm really feeling left out and really out of control when it comes to my schedule with you guys. And could we actually create a schedule? If it's, every other Saturday night, can we put that on the calendar? I really am into you two, and I want to make sure that I see you on a consistent basis. And it would feel really good for me if we could create some structure, something like that. The last thing that I would recommend is seeking help from a professional. This could be a licensed therapist, it could be a coach like me. I love coaching throuples, and it's one of my favorite things. Creating relationship dynamics that actually work for you guys as a throuple, as individual people, creating new rules for the family as you're bringing children together, as you're creating a life together. All of these things are just my absolute favorite thing to dive into. So if you're interested in coaching from me, I'll put a link below for coaching with Jen. We'll do a quick introductory session, see if we want to work together. And then I either have hourly coaching sessions that you can pay for, or I have chunks where you get a free session if you buy a chunk. A chunk, is that a word? If you buy a block of them. And if you have a therapist or you're looking for a therapist and you have insurance that will cover therapy, I also want to include, definitely go look at that option because I don't take insurance. Um, and that could be an option in your area. Maybe get online and search polyamorous therapists or non-traditional relationship therapist or LGBTQIA therapists, and you're going to find hopefully someone in your town or online that can help you. But this can get tricky as you're bringing in a whole nother partner, their children, maybe moving in together. You have the outer family. There's like lots and lots of potential things that could go wrong, but lots of things that can go right. And I always say, with enough purpose and intention and clarity and mindfulness, you can create a beautiful throuple that is so supportive to you and your life and your heart and your purpose and your values and what you want. It just takes a little bit of work. Okay, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this episode on throuples. Like, what the fuck is a throuple? Do I want one? What are the components of it? And I hope that this was helpful for you. I will see you next week. Bye. Hey there. Did you know that I do online coaching? Yes, I do online coaching in the sex and relationship space. Some of the topics that are near and dear to my heart are open relationships. So that includes polyamory, swinging, or what we call the lifestyle. I also love conversations around online dating. We're talking Bumble, Tinder, Field, and more. And then the last thing that's really passionate and close to my heart is conscious uncoupling. That means we get to break up with people with love and respect, with dignity and hope. We get to create a life for our children that gets to be a little bit different. We can do things better than we have in the past. So if any of these topics sound interesting to you and you'd love to get some coaching from me, check out the link in the show notes or the link in my bio for more information on coaching with Jen.
Thank you for listening to the Open Bedroom Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and give us a like and click subscribe below and stay up to date on all the new episodes that we release. If you have a topic that you'd really like more information on, leave us a comment below and we'll see what we can do. Feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and especially your partners. This is a great way to open up some amazing conversations. We'll see you next week.